Order, please. This regular meeting of the Joshua Basin Water District Board of Directors for January 15, 2025 is now in session at 5:30 hours. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is just there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Termination of a quorum. General Manager Johnson, roll call, please.
President Flowen.
Present.
Vice President Doolittle.
Here.
Director Fix.
Here.
Director Short.
Yes. And Director Charles Berg is ill this evening. All directors attending this meeting are present in the boardroom. There is no request for remote participation. We have a quorum. Do I hear a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
I'll make that motion that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Well, different name up there, but I know who that is. Public comment. This designated time is for members of the public to provide comments on any district-related matter, whether appearing on the agenda or not. Under provisions of the Brown Act, the board is prohibited from taking action on items not listed on the agenda. At the discretion of the board president, comments on a particular agendized item may be deferred until that item is heard. Do we have any public comments? Hearing none. Public comment time is now closed. Manager Johnson, is there written, electronic, or voicemail public comments?
None to my knowledge.
No. Consent calendar. Consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial, to be enacted upon by the board at one time without discussion. If a board member would like an item handled separately, it will be removed from the consent agenda, that is, for future action. We have two items. One will be the draft minutes from the December 18 meeting, and the other item is a check register for November 2024. Does anyone want to remove an item from the consent calendar for discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion / action calendar. Let's see, Director of Finance and Roman, you're going to speak on Renate. What is that? Rate scenario analysis.
I just have one question.
Yes.
So as part of, before we move on, as part of the that we have these 2024 director requests, and this is the first time that this has appeared in our agenda, and I'm delighted to see it, but where is the opportunity for us to comment on?
Under director comments.
Question the director comments. All right, thank you. Excuse me, Ann. No, that's all director. Roman.
All right. Well, thank you. Good evening. I have a lot of information for you tonight, but we'll try to keep it as brief as possible.
If you need a break, don't be shy.
Okay, thank you.
Autumn will take over for you.
On the spot. All right, we're going to start off with the rate scenario analysis. And what I've done here is from the last meeting, I've taken this out and gone with a longer term analysis, which I think might paint a more accurate picture for us than the short-term analysis that I was previously doing, which was really from the time that the rate study data was collected for the last rate study. So now we're looking back a little bit further, and I hope that will be helpful. So I wanted to start by first reminding everyone about the parameters of our financial structure. So our 2022-23 rate study sets projections for the major district needs. So those are things like maintenance and operations, capital improvement, meter replacement, equipment and technology replacement, reports and studies replacements. And that total need is about $10.5 million. The net position we've been talking about recently with review of our audited financial statements. And we did see that we had a I believe it was $3.866 million increase in our net position for 23-24. If we look back further, our net position has increased since 2018-19, 13.9 million. And that's an average of 2.79 million per year. If we look back even further, we can see our net position fluctuate from about a $900,000 decrease to a 4.478 million increase. And that's between 2011-12 and 23-24. That period of time, over that longer period of time, our net position increases average 1.634 million. Capital Improvement Plan, CIP. So that sets forth the major infrastructure needs that we're looking at when we set our budget and our rate study. So the CIP does set forth all those major needs except for meter replacement, equipment replacement, which is under the Equipment and Technology Fund, reports and studies, buildings and non-operational facilities. So in our CIP, it really only covers the pipeline and the booster stations and the tanks and the wells and so forth. It does not cover meters. It does not cover vehicles and equipment, does not cover reports and studies, or this building, for example, or the shop building. So we use the reserves, which are incorporated in the rate study to help fund those important needs. And then as a final reminder, before we get into the details here, the 2024 strategic plan sets forth objectives for us as well. And one of those is to prioritize pipe replacement and consider alternatives to accelerate the pace of pipe replacement. So that's objective 3.1. So that's something I wanted to put out there to keep in mind as we go through this data. So unrestricted LAIF balances. I brought in a history here from 2018-19 of the unrestricted LAIF balances. The restricted LAIF balances really don't impact this much because we don't have the ability to do anything with those other than what the purpose that they're legally restricted for. So we're looking at the unrestricted, and that's what's also in the rate study. When you look at that scenario C or scenario A list of costs, you will see in there that balance, and that balance in the rate study reflects the unrestricted balances. So when we look at the unrestricted LAIF balances and we compare that with the rate study projections for our balance, we're actually only off by about 1.86 million. And I say only, that's about 15%, but it's actually not tracking too poorly. It's tracking reasonably well with the rate study. So we're about 1.86 million higher in our cash balances than where the rate study projected we would be. And our net position, obviously, based on what I just shared with you, the net position fluctuates over the years, depending on quite a few factors. Increases, however, are generally seen as a positive thing. From 18-19 through 23-24, as I mentioned, the net position increased by 13.9 million. And that's really comprised of several things here, including cash of about 7.4 million and for almost 5 million in capital assets that the district acquired or put into service. So that 13.9 million is not just cash sitting in the bank, it is assets as well. And if we had no increase in net position, that would likely indicate little to no infrastructure improvement or a corresponding amount of debt that we would be acquiring. So we are actually in the fortunate situation right now that we are able to acquire these capital assets without corresponding debt. So that is generally a positive thing, and that reflects the pay-go philosophy that the district has had for some years. So reserves, we look at reserves. The rate study designated almost 8.5 million in reserve contributions since 2018-19 to be used for capital improvement. But if we look at the 2015-16 capital improvement plan, it requires 15.26 million in 15-16 dollars. So we're short 6.77 million to fund the capital improvement plan just in the time frame between 2018-19 and the current year. If we translate that 15.26 million in 15-16 dollars into when the capital improvement plan was updated, the costs were updated in 2022, it's about 58% higher, making the shortfall 10.7 million over just this period of time that we're analyzing. So we do acknowledge that capital improvement work has temporarily slowed more than we anticipated, and so that's why we're seeing some additional cash in the bank at this point. The rate study also designated 4.49 million for equipment and technology, meter replacement, and studies and reports, which are again items that are excluded from the CIP. So this designated funding is an estimate that includes saving 3 million, which is based on the original 2018 costs for CIRP equipment replacement starting as soon as 2028. So the bottom line here is really that scenario C, which is what we have in place, only funds about 56% of the 2015-16 CIP over this time period that we're analyzing, 2018-19 forward. If we get into a little more of the details here, what we're recommending is that the board continue the course of the board-approved rate study scenario C that has been in place to be effective February 2025. It was originally slated to be effective January 2025, but of course we postponed that. This summary goes back to some of the things that I've already brought forward, and the reasoning for the recommendation that I'm making is many reasons, but to avoid falling behind, first of all, in knowing that delaying increases would result in losing about 578,000 in revenues for this fiscal year. And if we break that down by month, it's about 48,000. So, just that postponement of 1 month is costing about 48,000. Also, chromium 6 preparation, as we know, we sat in this, we all know this is coming. We sat in this room yesterday with our Jacobs engineering firm to go over some of the chromium 6 to kick that off. And there are going to be a lot of needs related to chromium 6, many of which we hope will be able to obtain grant or loan funding for, but we just don't know all those details yet. The capital improvement plan funding, again, scenario C and the strategic plan indicate that the current rates cannot fully fund the CIP needs. The strategic plan suggests exploring bond debt as a potential solution for accelerating CIP work. And we, of course, do need an updated CIP to better project costs, and that's something that's on the list to do. We also, if we find ourselves in a situation where we do believe we have excess funds in the bank, we certainly have loan payoff opportunities for the CIRP loan that would save the ratepayers' interest as well. And just again, looking at the longer term statistics, I think we're really not as far off base as we look to be when we look at the short term statistics. And so while this year, 23-24 was an anomaly, it was financially strong with factors like deferred capital work and unavoidable vacancies rather than sustainable or desired improvements. So, and we are trying to put money aside for those reserves, for those specific purposes like equipment replacement, reports and studies, and CIRP work. I will, with that, take any questions gladly that you may have on this topic. I know there's a lot here.
President Doolittle?
Well, thank you, Ann. So did some of this work occur from the time that we had a delay in reviewing this? Because this is more in depth, right?
Yes, I
Yeah,
expect.
right. Well,
More.
glad you had that time. It's a great report and has data that we were likely to ask.
Thank you.
And so I really appreciate you telling us that. So sharing a lot of that. Some of the slides went a little fast, but anyway. So you said the total, when we were on page 24 of the agenda, you said the total need is 1.5 million. When you were referring to, what were you talking about when you said that?
Oh, 10.5, let me go back.
Oh, was it?
It was 10.5 million.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry, I wrote that
in
down wrong.
The rate study for our maintenance operations, capital.
Oh, okay.
And funding those other.
Okay,
reserves.
all right, okay. So, and then, yeah, thank you for the concentration on the net position because that's my new favorite thing now. And so I've been thinking about it a lot and that's what I look at. And here and then also on this color coded table that you made for us. I thought I had a big wow on the fact that the net position increased by, 14 million in 5 years. That just seems to me like a tremendous amount. And when you look at the rate study cash balance, the rate study ending fund reserves at fiscal year 2021 to 2022, it was at 5 million. And then fiscal year, it was at 12 million.
Yeah,
Am I right? Is that right?
That may have been a change in, because that's when the new rate study took effect.
Yeah.
So I believe the old rate study may have excluded some of the reserves that we had in place. When we started the new rate study, we probably captured more of the LAIF balances, the LAIF reserves is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Because I did notice that big jump as well.
Yeah.
What I can say though too is if you think about just our pipeline replacement, if we are on track and doing our pipeline replacement per the CIP, that's $2 million alone each year in capital improvements that would increase our net position by $2 million per year.
Yeah.
So, that would be over 5 years, $10 million.
Yeah.
And so, that's not too far off base from where we actually are. Now, I won't say that we did $2 million each year in that 5-year period.
Yeah.
But, we certainly are on track to do that. And we certainly did add almost $5 million in assets, capital assets during that time.
Mhm.
So that is a good portion of that net increase in, increase in net position.
Yeah, and the questions that I'm coming from is, again, just to remind everybody is that, I remember very clearly when we did this rate study and the number of ratepayers that were in the room and how ardent and passionate they were. And many of them appeared to me or seemed to state that they were not able to afford their water right now. And so I am coming at it from that point of view. And so that's where my questions are coming from. And they're not necessarily, trying to ferret out any nefarious information here. I think it's all clear pretty much, but I'm just wanting to look at it and really think about it. And so one of the things I'm thinking about, well, just a couple of things. Well, so the CIP, I know you said we last updated it in 2022.
Yes, we updated the cost.
Right, the costs. And so I don't, and I think I've asked about this before, and that might be one thing that I haven't, that isn't on the list is, I asked, had it been adjusted lately? And are we tracking completions? I know that maybe we saw some information last year where we were given an update on how we're doing on it. But I also know that, there was a need for a strategic plan related to that. And we've said that in our strategic plan. And so I'm just, we're not spending that money. And so now we have, some money available to us, and it's going to take us a little while to staff up. And I don't imagine, not that I'm in charge of operations by any means, but I certainly would hope we would be able to staff up quickly and be able to get the show on the road as far as all that work goes. But it does make me wonder if, we're going to be trying to fund these things. And again, it's just some of that money is just going to sit there because we're not able to execute.
Well, the ET1 project, we just finished the RFP, and that's, I think we were budgeting 400,000, and we're learning from the engineer's estimate to be about 800,000. So, we will be working on projects. That's one of them, and the costs are.
ERP, did you say?
ET1.
E21. Oh, okay, the tank. Okay. Okay. So yeah, anyway, so that's just, I was concerned about that. And then you said something about the CIRP equipment replacement 2028. What is, it'll be the time to replace some of our stuff.
We'll start.
Those
yeah,
expensive
start
things.
Looking at that because
Okay.
that's 10 years. So the equipment that needs to be replaced the most quickly.
That we bought in
we'll look at that.
2018.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And then at some point, the change in net position, I know I talked about the LAIF up there and the rate study fund reserves, but the change in net position, again, it seemed like, that 12 million over what we were for all the, the decrease from 2018, 2019. Again, that just seems like a big jump in 5 years. So I know you referenced that, but it doesn't seem like it could be totally accounted for. I'm not saying that it's not true what you're saying. It just boggles the mind that that's happening and that somehow we were able to purchase all that equipment and increase things like that. And, and how does a ratepayer know, or because I don't even know as a board member, how much of that stuff was really necessary. And that's always been my fear, is that the district's acquiring a lot of stuff that maybe, we don't necessarily have to have. So there that is. That's just that little fear right there. Okay, so I didn't bring my phone tonight, so I don't have some of my notes that I'd taken earlier, so I had to come in and do it really fast. All right, so in 2023, non-operating revenue, this is on page 25, was approximately 3 times the average, reflecting an irregular year. And you're saying that was because of shorter staffing issues and what?
I'm sorry, which paragraph?
Page 25, number 4, audited financial trends. At the bottom, it says in 23-24, non-op revenue was approximately 3 times the average, reflecting an irregular year.
Right. So we had quite a bit of additional revenue that came in 23-24, including 815,000 in capacity charges, which are unbudgeted and restricted. 353,000 in additional unbudgeted interest because the interest rates were.
I remember that,
high.
yeah.
Yeah. 144,000 in additional unbudgeted property taxes. We had 872,000 that was attributable to additional budgeted water related revenues per the rate study. 90,000 in LEWOP revenues that were unbudgeted, and 37,000 in miscellaneous unbudgeted revenues, 92,000 in unbudgeted gain on sale of assets. So we had that surplus vehicle and equipment sale that netted about 92,000 there. And we had a cost savings also of 1.23 million in payroll and benefit costs. So we had quite a few empty positions that were budgeted for part year or full year. Compliance coordinator, office assistant, purchasing tech, a second accounting tech, distribution supervisor, production position. And so that amounts to about 3.633 million out of the 3.866 that we saw in our net position increase. So we had other slowed spending in addition to that, so less capital spending than
Right.
we would have anticipated.
Post-COVID.
Right. So, yeah, so it was an unusual year, although things are, if the property taxes stay at the level where they are, this is where as you get further away from that brand new rate study, things are going to go out of alignment more and more. And so, that will get reevaluated when we do the next rate study. If that's going to be the new norm, then, that will get reevaluated and that bar will get reset.
Yeah.
What I'm concerned about is I think that I see some conflicting information between the goals in the strategic plan and the goal the goal of the CIP to replace all of this infrastructure. But, we have to be able to fund that. And that's actually what scenario A of the rate study set out to do. And the board chose to adopt scenario C, which has put us in a good position at this moment because of the delays that we've seen. But, for full funding of the CIP, or as close as we can get to full funding, scenario A was actually the recommended course of action. Sorry, I went off track a little bit there.
Okay, right. Well, so you're saying that I have two things to say, that the average was $2.6 million per year of increase due to the rate study, or other items amortized over these years since the rate study. Didn't you say 2.6 million or?
3.866 is what our net position increase was this year.
Right,
The
yeah.
non-operating revenue, did I bring that? Let me see. I did bring that.
You had it over time. It was over several years. You had said, I don't know if it's on the,
Oh, you know what? I have it in.
yeah, if that was on a slide or something. So, yeah, I'm just, if we get to that number or however close that number was.
Non-operating revenue. Yeah, so our non-operating.
Oh, 2.79 million annually. It's number 2, the net position growth. Is that what you said?
That's the net position.
Okay, but
Yeah.
there was.
That's an average.
Okay, yeah.
7.9 was an average
Yeah.
from
Okay.
1819 to
Yeah.
324.
Yeah.
And, versus 3.866 million this year. So you can see we are higher in
Yeah.
2024. But, when we look back, we're not that far off base from the prior average. When you look back even further though, and you incorporate all the way back to 11-12, it decreases, that average decreases to 1.6 million of an increase in net position each year. But remember, costs are going up each year.
Okay.
And so, that.
Okay, so it's
the value of
1.6 million since 2011, 2012.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So-
And those costs are going up each year, and the value and cost of capital assets is going up each year. So I wouldn't expect that to increase.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's interesting. So $1.5 million, it's just kind of hard to square that or actually, have visibility. I'd just be curious what the industry, this industry's, how that compares to any analysis that anybody's ever done, to really recognize that. So to see, I mean, on one hand, it doesn't seem that bad, but then on the other hand, because of costs and everything, but on the other hand, it's like, wow, really, 1.6 million. But again, there's the CIP and funding that. So segueing to that, just, as far as the CIP funding goes, when that plan was put together, that's when we were losing, a good amount of water with leaks and things like that. And I'm just wondering, when we reanalyze that, we've done a lot of repairs on some of that. I recognize that we need to repair things that aren't necessarily leaking to prevent leaks, precog. But anyway, I'll be curious to look at that if you guys are following what I'm saying. So to make sure that we are tracking and that the urgency that for these funds is really there, because just looking at it, I'm inclined to really question if we need to do this rate increase. And I realize that I was wondering, how many years have you been here?
17.
So in those 17 years, did we ever not do a rate increase? Did you remember?
Oh, during my time here, I think there were a few years that we held the rate steady. Prior to that, there were some, major situations that occurred, and there were some decreases, I think that, but again, it reflects the lack of work that was being done at the time on infrastructure.
I remember kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recall that. I remember that. I mean, was there just, terrible things that happened when they kept the rates steady? Except for that, were there other things besides that?
A lot of getting lucky.
Yeah.
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 Okay, all right, okay.
A year or two is not catastrophic,
Yeah.
especially in the position that we're in now.
Yeah.
We do have some big variables coming at us quickly. That's a big concern because we don't know what kind of funding we're going to get.
Yeah.
With grants for Chromium 6. And, we sat in that meeting yesterday and all I saw was dollar signs.
Yeah. Well, I had a ratepayer tell me last year when we were talking about rates, and she was like, remember that you guys said that these rate increases were for Chromium. And so far, it doesn't feel like this has been for Chromium yet. And so we're on the third year now of this rate increase. Is that right?
The third, but I don't know that we said directly that this was for Chromium. We were more focused on capital replacement.
With Chromium.
Scenario A would get us to the Chromium levels.
There is a little bit of Chromium funding in there. There's 750,000 starting in 24-25 in operations and maintenance for Chromium. So that's actually going to probably be 1 year later than what it was projected to be on the rate study. So that will be a savings.
Yeah.
But yeah, my recollection also is that we were really trying to fund the CIP fully and looking out towards Chromium as a variable in the future as well. So knowing that we were going to need even more funding for that potentially, with, the hope that we could certainly achieve as much grant funding as possible.
Right. Well, I seem to remember that the Chromium 6, it's something that people fear, and seems like there was a sense of urgency or handling that fear in the rate study. And that I do think people took away from that way more the attitude of that we were going to address Chromium, which they're very fearful of, rather than the kind of abstract CIP, and how that, even if they recognize that we need to maintain and we bang the drum on that, I think that the Chromium is the thing that people focused on a little bit with the rate study. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay. Director Fitt?
Well, you said there's $48,000 difference between January and February.
Right, the 578,000 works out to about 48,000 a month, when we postponed this for that month of time. we'll lose about 48,000 a month if we were to postpone it again, but 578,000 for the entire fiscal year if we were not to allow those rate increases to roll out as they had been approved to.
Well, I did the math on that. It's roughly $102 per hookup, but I don't know what scale we have as far as commercial or residential hookup.
Right.
So it's $8.50 a month increase.
I'd have to look. Yeah.
$8.57 as far as the calculator goes. And is this in usage or is this in just the standby?
In
The increase.
The
Basic
increases,
fee.
no, the
Basic.
increases on both the basic and the consumption rates.
Okay, so the 1-inch meter goes to what, from what to what?
The 1-inch meter goes from, let me see. Had that ready, please. I do have the new schedule here, though. Let me bring that out.
Yeah.
So this is an excerpt from the rate schedule. This is the new one. I think I have the old one, though.
David has it, I think.
David have it? It's funny, I usually bring it too, but I didn't. Oh, sorry, here's the 45.55 is the current basic fee, so that's going to 47.80. And the tiered charges are going from starting at 9. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong. Sorry, too many scenarios.
There you go.
I'm in the wrong scenario. All right, I'm gonna tell you the right one this time. Okay, so 45.55 is the basic currently, and that's gonna be going to 47.80. The tiered charges will go from $8 for the first tier, 0 to 5 units, from $8 to $9.05 per unit. The second tier, 6 to 10 units, will go from $9.65 to $10.75. And the third tier will go from $11.30 to $12.45. The fourth tier will go from $12.95 to $14.15.
Okay, and then, so what is the alternative to approving this? If we stay with the old, what, do we have that option of staying with the old 24?
Yeah, I mean, I think you really have any option that you choose. The downside to it, of course, would be, losing almost 600,000 in revenue for this year, for this fiscal year. But,
What's the time value of money on that loss? So
Yeah.
next year we
Well,
have to increase.
that's another question. So then next year, does it jump to where the rates were supposed to be? Which, you would have skipped a year of rate increases, but jump to that subsequent year's rates, which would be a much bigger adjustment for customers? Or do you then go with this year's rates next year, and then you're losing compounding effect of the rate increases? So that would be a greater loss.
But
My,
a greater savings for the ratepayers.
yes,
Excuse
yes,
me.
I know that part. That's,
Yeah.
my concern is we are going into a pretty dark time as far as future financing estimates go. We don't know what's gonna happen in the next year. And I'm tending to keep it where it is now. So that's my concern, is that we can dip into our reserves somehow or whatever, because I have great skepticism towards the future benefits of our economy going on.
Sorry, not to change the subject, but I just, this jumped out at me. The billing impact, which is, on a 8-unit bill. So our average would change from 114.50 to 125.30. So in total,
So
for
it's
an average bill.
$11 average.
Yeah.
Increase.
That's just on the water usage. then.
No, that's
Not
the total bill with
the
8
basic
units of
fee.
usage,
Well, I'm saying that's the average. Average is 8 units.
8 units.
And then,
with 8 units.
yeah, that's a tough call. We also don't have a board of 4, so. Might be 2 too, so, okay, those are my comments. And concerns.
Concerns. Director Short.
I can understand on both sides of this. It would be a gamble to stand where we are. Tough one for sure. We said that if were with rate scenario A right now, we would be near full funding of the CIP or CIRP.
Right, based on, the data that we had at the time,
Mhm.
prepared the rate study, so as need an update.
Share a little bit of information. I was gonna do it in my report, but it's fine to talk about it now. The Joshua Tree Endangered Species Act that was passed a couple of years ago through the budget trailing bill has been passed to Fish and Wildlife to manage, and they have written a procedure manual on how to work around public works projects around the Joshua trees, which we all care about. It's one of the reasons that we love living here is because it is a unique feature to our area. Yucca Valley right now is doing their sewer project, and they're kind of a guinea pig in this arena. And so this is very preliminary information, and it is subject to change, and it's very new. In order to proceed in their sewer project, they're having to survey every Joshua tree that's in the area that they're going to do any construction, every seedling, small Joshua tree, large Joshua tree, and then once they have that survey complete and it's on foot, by hand, photographed, documented for every single remnant of a Joshua tree, that is submitted to Fish and Wildlife. And let me back up one moment. Fish and Wildlife has published a manual of how to work in these projects, but it's not been adopted or approved yet, but they're already enacting the procedures in the manual. And that survey, so back to the survey, gets submitted to them, and every single Joshua tree that's in the way, whether you touch it or you don't touch it, the agency will be responsible for paying a take fee. And the take fee, and then on top of that, there's a relocation 3-year agreement is what I'm understanding, that you would have to grow Joshua trees in a different area to make up for any that were impacted. Those fees are more than the cost of the projects. So I just want to put that out there. So the project that would cost $1 million, if this ends up being the new normal, will cost $2 million. The engineer I spoke to yesterday on this said that they're project killers and they're community killers because it's making it very challenging to move forward with some of these projects. So I just want to put that out there. Costs are not going to go down for us. Whether if they get to something that's more reasonable or not, there's still going to be an increase, it looks like, with the endangered process through Fish and Wildlife.
So that's Yucca Valley though.
No, it's Joshua Tree. It's anywhere that's Joshua trees, but Yucca Valley's going through it.
I know where
currently.
Joshua trees are.
Yes, they're going through it currently, yes. And so is Mojave Water Agency with the Ames Retchie project that they're trying to do. They're going through it currently with Fish and Wildlife and hoping that they can find a solution for the situation of the construction of the recharge ponds for that area.
Yeah, we had that one that was interfering with the Belmont project, right?
So Belmont project is an example. Even if we were fully staffed, we would be stopped right now because we'd have to complete surveys, submit the survey to Fish and Wildlife, and then they would either approve it or not approve it, and then we would have to pay those take fees for every piece that's within 50 feet of the construction. 50, not 15. And I do want to stress, we all love Joshua trees, so this isn't anything about that. It's just the reasonableness of getting a job done, and the cost is of concern, and how to proceed with that. So just, another thing to contemplate as you're discussing this very important decision.
I guess that's all for me for now.
Well, this is, let me point this out, this is, it says on your discussion on the agenda, so there can be some.
Okay, well, we'd be here for hours if I started discussing Joshua trees and Yucca Valley and their contempt for Joshua trees. Both the city and the district. So,
Let me back up, because this isn't about Yucca Valley necessarily.
I know.
It's just that they're currently going through it. So they're actually having to deal with this, and we would currently be going through it too, should Belmont be active. So, anyway, it's just that they are currently, Mojave Water Agency is another example of currently going through that process.
but I'm aware that Joshua Tree probably has about 8 to 10 square miles of Joshua trees as far as the kind of density people are used to, which 15 or 20 per acre. Whereas Yucca Valley has probably 20 times more Joshua trees.
You're right, we do have less, but the survey has to be done nonetheless, so that's a cost. And all the documentation, photographing, boots on the ground, actually out there measuring. They're measuring sticks and measuring how far away it is from, there's all sorts
They've
of.
actually reduced the cost per tree from what I saw, 3 times already, so.
So, the engineer I spoke to yesterday, I asked him to give us a cost on what that would be for the Belmont project, because they're the ones that did the survey for us in the past. So I should have some numbers soon. He said, don't freak out, it's the worst case scenario, but anyway, it's not a pretty number necessarily.
And Sarah, can I just interject also? I thought of this yesterday in our meeting about chromium 6. I don't know why this came up in my mind, but we are, in the past, the infrastructure work has been somewhat optional. It's been deferred because, the can's been kicked down the road. But that's not really going to be an option as much in the future, because the state is actually preparing more interference or intervention, I guess, in regard to water loss. And so I think they're going to tie our hands more so on doing that kind of infrastructure work. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think that you're exactly right. The infrastructure work is going to be vital in order to reduce our water loss with our aging infrastructure. And, Kathleen knows a lot about this too. The per capita per day, the gallons per day that they're seeing for 2030 is 42 per day.
Average?
Yes.
No, I thought we were on her.
No.
Oh, what it's gonna.
Yes, what they're aiming,
Yes, they're shooting by 2030 to get down to 42.
42, and currently we're averaging, it depends on of course, the time of the year, but
Our best numbers, I believe, were just a little below 70.
that's really good, and that's probably low
That was
winter,
like
summer time.
It was winter time,
Right.
yes.
So that's just consumption. We're not talking, then you have to add in water loss to that, and they're going to start limiting what we're allowed to lose. So anyway, those are just other considerations.
Yeah, they're limiting the amount we're allowed to lose, while at the same time, they're making it almost impossible to replace 160 miles of pipe.
There's that too.
Are between 40 and 75 years old. Okay.
Well, a little catch 22 there, for sure. We want to do the work. We want to do it right. We want to follow all the regulations and guidelines. But it's definitely getting very challenging, and I foresee it getting more and more challenging and more expensive.
Well, I think it was something we should acknowledge, that staff has done an excellent job over these years of accumulating a substantial amount of savings in our life accounts. That's not a bad thing to have accumulated money over this time period. And this kind of touches on a little bit where it gets to be where it's kind of hard to spend money. This need for $2.5 million per year for capital improvement funding. I'm looking at the rate study that Bartle and Wells, which is an independent business, Bartle and Wells did for us. That was Alex Handlers, who specifically was assigned to study the district and its needs, and then come up with recommendations on how to fund everything for the next 5 years. And he's done that at least once for us in the past, and he's done the current one that we're using. And I'll get a little bit ridiculous here and say, imagine some aliens from another planet approaching Earth, and they're curious as to whether or not we're worthy of contact. And before they're discovered, they happen to find a set of Encyclopedia Britannica. And because they were then discovered, they only had time to grab one volume of the set. And would it be fair for a disinterested party such as that to make judgments about our worthiness when considering only one volume and not having access to the other 31? And it wouldn't be right. In other words, to take this historical snapshot in time and try to justify the fact that we have a lot of money, it's not quite reasonable to this camper. Anyway, if Alex was estimating, $2.5 million a year for capital improvement. Well, if you look at the budget for this year, it's just something a little over 500,000. And there'd be a couple of reasons for that. Understaffing and the inability to get supplies, pipe in particular. You kind of need that if you're going to do repiping, you need pipe. And also too, the expense of the pipe, went up stratospherically and priced at $23.32 for a foot of the pipe instead of $5.66 for a foot of the pipe. And so it's kind of difficult because he was looking at all of this at the time that he was looking at all this stuff. That's Alex. And here we are a couple of years later, and rightfully so. He says in here too that we were going to review our rates and such as time went on. So we're doing an appropriate thing here, although we're probably testing staff patience. A little bit sorry about my story, but I think it illustrates the point that we have accumulated a lot of money, and there are ways, if there's an implication that we reduce rates, I don't think, and this would be something for lawyers maybe to decide, but I don't think we would have to do Prop 13 type stuff again to raise them back, as long as we don't go over the Schedule A limitations kind of a thing. At least that's the way it is now. But still, if we did, if we projected that we were going to run out of money and we had to go to the ratepayers to get a vote and all that stuff, just to get started on that, it would take 45 days. Sending out notices and all that kind of stuff. It would make it would make really hard. This Chromium 6 thing, it was a big deal back then, and it continues to be. I was kind of curious about how much money we've actually spent on Chromium 6 things so far. And I would imagine it's a lot of money. We were at the time this last rate study was done, we were and this is all soft because these are estimates, but we were projecting that the facilities would cost $18 million back then. And how much is a surplus thing that we're talking about now? And also the yearly cost of maintaining the facilities would be $750,000 a year, according to the rate study. And, there's big numbers involved in this, and we can't predict, we couldn't predict, several years ago that we were going to have the surplus today. And similarly, we cannot predict what financial situation or what our posture will be a few years from now either. And we're not delivering pizza here, something that's optional. where, no pizza, you can go to the fridge and get out a TV dinner or something. We're talking about life-giving substance here. And it has to be pure too, as pure as we can get it. And we have to get it in quality, and we're not talking quantity. We're not talking about just the health of individuals. We're talking about the health of the entire community. And then by extension too, whatever we're suffering here with all of this, they're suffering in other places too. So I think it's really good that we got a lot of dough in the back. That's a good thing. And I think we should keep being judicious in the way we spend our funds. I have every confidence that we are. I mean, even we can't get our agendas in color. They have to be in black and white. These chargeable batteries. Nice.
I have a couple other things to.
It's a discussion. Go ahead.
Okay, so that would kind of what you were saying is, I'd be curious about what belt tightening has the district done? And I'd also like to know how much is the daily average cost for water now? You told me a number, I remember, told me a number a couple years ago when I was concerned about affordability. And so I'd like to have that number, but you guys.
You mean from Mojave?
No,
Or to
annual for ratepayers. How much is water? It costs me $1.50 a day for my water, whatever it costs. I'd just like to know that again with the rate, with the increase, what that would be. So we're a disadvantaged community, and what is the breaking point? At what point we just can't keep marching forward and spending as much as the district does. And, for one example, how about buying vehicles using the state bid list like other districts? I think our fancy trucks seem, incongruous. And then to be asking for handout yearly from a disadvantaged community. We drive the best top of the line shiny trucks. And yet we're going to the ratepayers and saying, we gotta have more, we can't do it. It doesn't seem like it jives. So I would like to see us address the vehicles, the quality of the vehicles and having to buy them that top of the line. I see other districts are not doing that. Other districts have not awarded their general managers with really fancy vehicles, all this sort of things. And we just have to look at it because we are a disadvantaged community. And I don't know how to determine what the breaking point is. How do we determine that?
Well, we don't buy top of the line. We do buy the second one from the bottom. The one at the bottom doesn't have air conditioning. And so our heat illness prevention plan, our vehicles are cooling stations. So that's the one step that they have above everything else, but they don't have top of the line. I mean, vehicles these days come with the backup cameras automatically. So those are installed. And we only buy what there is for replacements. We have very, very little downtime with our vehicles, where other districts have constant downtime where the vehicle's at the shop or down in the dealership. Our vehicles are constantly running with very, very little downtime. So there's a benefit to that. I mean, if we have a vehicle that can't make it across these terrible desert roads, that's going to be a disadvantage because it ends up costing more in the long run. So we are very careful about that. It's a long term, that's a question that's come up many, many times. I think it would maybe be a separate discussion because it's just one item. And I think it's important to discuss and to readdress and relook at on a regular basis.
I put it on my request. That was one thing that was not there, which is request regarding the fleet and the cost of the fleet. And in fact, I think Director Jarlsberg recently brought that up again as well.
Well, I watched this over and they got about a 5 or 10% less than the average cost. And well, if you get into Tundras and Tacomas, they're the most reliable vehicles made, and financially they're a very good deal.
So we got them, with a government discount. So we did go, and then when we sold all of the vehicles, we get the highest return as well because they are Toyotas. And they have very high resale value. We were able to get last year that was 150,000 approximately from the surplus of the older vehicles.
Do we, well, is there a difference between this period of time that and the rate at which a vehicle depreciates, which that varies, from 10 years on down, depending on what the thing is.
I thought she said we were gonna talk about this at a future time.
Yeah. Oh, wasn't so much fun.
Okay, we can talk, I just,
Let me-
details I can't get into tonight, I don't have.
Yeah, let me finish this point though, but is there a difference over this depreciation rate of a vehicle to when we actually sell them? Because you raise the issue of,
Certainly.
buying things all the time. So, yeah, you did. And so in other words, we are very judicious, I guess it would be, we're very careful about the maintenance of the vehicles. We have a mechanic person over there that maintains everything. And so in other words, it's just because of depreciation write-off type thing in the accounting, it's not a tax thing, but the write-off in the accounting thing, is there a difference between that and the time we actually sell the vehicle because we preserve them so well?
Yes, correct. That's true. In this last round of surplus vehicles, how old was the oldest vehicle? Do you remember?
Oh,
I want to say,
13?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So 10 years.
Right,
Maybe
about
about
10
10.
years. The other thing you had asked Vice President Doolittle was, what have we done to cut? And last budget season, I think it was in the presentation, but before we brought the budget to the board, we cut out, and Ann, do you remember that number? It was 1.2 or 1.6 million dollars.
Yeah, it was one or the other. I don't remember
Yeah.
exactly.
Before we even brought it to the board. So we look very carefully and scrutinize every single line item to make sure that we're not purchasing what we don't need to purchase. We don't want to manage more than what we need either. So we have a big job, and adding more doesn't make things easier necessarily. So we only want to get what we need to make, our jobs doable.
And I put some weight in this list of things we could do with money, in particular, paying down on our, is it a bond over here or a loan for Saddleback?
Oh, CIRP is a loan.
Okay, so we could pay that down with surplus funds also, should we choose to do so. But I don't know, I don't know if I've took your point correctly, but this thing about the uncertainty about the future and who's going to be running the Department of Agriculture, which has that low income community loan thing. We got one for
CNN.
Copper Mountain Mesa through them. Who knows what the financial environment is going to be like as time goes by. And the more money we have, the more maneuvering ability we have. And also, if we demonstrate financial responsibility, potentially we're going to get a lower interest rate because there's less risk.
But isn't there a question, I'm just wondering about this, and it's been brought up before about the idea of what are we paying that future ratepayers would have to bear? So like when we're paying off a loan for this work on the CIP stuff, that's really going to benefit future ratepayers. Isn't that putting an increased burden on the ratepayers right now when we do that? Because we're saying, well, we want to raise rates, so we want to do that. And it's going to save us money, but it's the current ratepayers who are paying for that for the future. And, they haven't signed up for that, I don't think.
I thought that too. And even though I'm going to say something now, it's still true, but we have the capacity fee. And that is where they buy into a system that's been built by other people, which benefits people that already paid to build the stuff. However, it still impacts the people that are here now paying the bills. That's true. Unless I hear more arguments about it.
I think another angle on this is the ratepayers, like Vice President Doolittle was saying, we live in a disadvantaged community. I know a lot of people in my area live off of Social Security and VA disability. The increase this year on that was 2.5%. It's down from in 2023, it was 8.5%. So that is down drastically. So it's not just, everybody's feeling the increase of prices, and I think that's going to impact our community a lot more than other places. So I think that is something to consider as well.
I did just hear that the rate of inflation is only at 2.7%. That's the growth of it.
Which one?
of
Winter.
overall inflation and actually groceries over a period of time. And it was like a 14-year study of Walmart they have risen 25%, like in the past 2 years. So that's really happened, but over time, it's a lot less, so.
Which, by the way, affects our savings. In other words, the savings that we have through LAIF are worth 2.5, you say 2.5% less than they were a year ago. If you just isolate that. So you can argue that it's better to spend your money quickly. I noticed Jeff has just joined us.
You might be here, thereupon. I would ask Jeff the question, if it's a 2-2 vote, does it go forward?
It does not. A 2-2 vote would fail.
Okay, I would think, still discussion, I'm not gonna do the motion yet, but I would think I would wanna have this tabled for about 3 months. One, we don't have a full board, and so that might be the deciding factor. And then we would get a clue as to what craziness is happening on the national level.
Oh, we have a clue. Not to be political.
That again would be $150,000 loss to the district loss. Just saying, if we wait 3 months.
I haven't heard anything about anything about the Department of Agriculture. Is Fish and Wildlife part of Department of Agriculture? I'm ignorant on that state.
I think they're separate.
We're state. The Joshua Tree stuff is state, which is fortunately not involved with the federal people.
We're a disadvantaged community, and I know, pick on Ann a little bit. We've shared a little bit about our upbringing. Both Ann and I grew up very poor, and so we very much hold that near and dear. It's part of who we are as people. We know how hard it is to scrape by. I'm sure other folks in this room as well. Yeah. So, being very thoughtful with the money is very near and dear. We agree. Do you think, I'm asking this rhetorically a little bit and just for discussion, is our disadvantaged status going to change? I know we've had an Airbnb change. Is that going to change in the future? Do we suspect that this is a question we may not know? I'm guessing here.
Jeff's here.
Sorry, I'm coughing. I thought I was muted. I apologize.
Kathleen.
Oh,
Yeah,
I can't see her.
interestingly, especially since the disastrous fires, we're having a huge influx of people who are coming into our community. I know this is a fact because the cultural center runs after school and during school programs, and we've been slammed by people coming in from the burnt areas. I think they own the Airbnbs.
Oh, interesting.
Or maybe a friend said, go use our Airbnb, but they're all coming out here because they have nothing to go to.
Sure.
And they're coming out huge amounts. The phone calls have not stopped. And I'm just gauging it on this is what we're experiencing the last few days. It's been extreme. So whether they stay or not, they're coming here right now.
Yeah, so it's a question I don't know that we can fully answer, but my thought is that this has always been, at least until this point, and we don't know what will happen in the future, a disadvantaged community. And by not completing capital projects when they were a lot less expensive, $10 a foot instead of now, $70 a foot, has impacted today's people. And they're having to pay a much higher price because it wasn't done before, and that's unfortunate. And I get it. Decisions are made at time because they have people like us sat at these tables and made these really hard decisions. I just worry about impacting, the next 10 years. What's going to happen? The prices have been so unstable. And are we going to, in 4 years, be sitting at these tables and saying, well, now it's not 70 a foot, it's 140 a foot. And and plus the Joshua Tree take fee. And so what is that going to do? And so I just want to make sure, and I know that you all are, I see it in each of you, really putting thought into this, but where are prices going to go? We don't know. What's the community going to be in the future? We don't know, but we do know we have infrastructure that has to be replaced. And you guys have all been really strong about not kicking that can down the road. So I just want to be very thoughtful that if that's where we're at, we have investment and our net increase in our net
Position.
net position has increased because of the work that we've done and we want to continue that pattern. Or is that not really the focus and vision anymore? I don't know, but I want to be thoughtful that we're making that decision together so that we know what we're supposed to execute. Because if we're not raising as we planned and we discussed 3 years ago, almost when we had the rate study, there might be a shift in what our focus is as staff, and we need to know what that shift is.
Well, just to be clear, I was remarking on the interest, paying the interest on the loans and having that burden be solely on current day ratepayers. I wasn't talking about the CIP,
Oh, thank you for that
their
clarification.
CIRP or whatever we want to call it, improvements necessarily.
It's supposed to go for 30 years. That's the plan.
And then
In
it
the
starts
rate-
over,
in the
right, and then
rate
it starts
study.
over, right, yeah.
You know, if we wanted to do 160 odd miles of 164 miles of pipe, I mean, how many have we done? 10? Something like that.
We're around 8.
We
Yeah,
just scratched
yeah.
it. But it's also a learn as you go kind of thing too.
Yeah.
Regarding maybe some boo-boos that we've made, you know, we make them all the time. I do, I know that, for God's sake. At any rate, without anything, do we have any public discussion? David Carrillo from our Citizens Advisory Council.
I would say this is a tough place to be in. I would say that in choosing C, we did delay the price of being A, which has helped our community. But I also see that time is money. If our trucks are down, then that costs money. Things aren't getting fixed. If we're not fixing our infrastructure, we're gonna have leaks that we don't see for a while, and we're gonna be losing a lot of money in water. And so it's a tough place to be in. But my question is, since we're still in C, if we voted for the rate hike and things actually go better than planned as far as our economy, could we bring that back down later?
Right, okay, great. Anytime the board, we do a rate study, there's different options, yeah.
Because right now it was, we could delay it or raise it. I mean, that in this scenario, we could still bring it down, say in
You just
3,
can't
4
go
months,
above.
5, 6, yes.
Yeah.
So that's also an option. But I think taking care of our infrastructure and trying to wiggle our way through this maze that,
Mhm.
of things people keep throwing at us.
I'll throw one at you
It's really
too.
hard.
We're getting 5% at Mojave, we're getting 5% of our allocation because they don't have the water to send the whole thing down here. And so there could be some restrictions put on our consumers here again. And we get 42% of our income from water consumption. So there's a threat there.
That might change though, because the
Oh, God, I
the
hope so.
snow in the Sierra Nevada right now is like higher than it was last year.
Yeah,
So there's more than there was last year.
there's 3 sides to that coin. Another thing is
Right.
that Mojave Water Agency has reserves. And they could give us our full allocation, but if the governor says that we have to reduce consumption, regardless of the supply, we still have to reduce consumption, therefore reduce our income. And so what do we rely on then to continue our programs?
Well, our very high basic fee is what we rely on.
Is there a motion from the board to continue the course of board approved action related to rate study scenario C? I'll make the motion. Is there a second? Hearing none, the motion fails.
Well, there's still it's still open, right? Right, so somebody else can make another motion for this to be reconsidered.
Oh, thank you.
Correct?
Go ahead.
Right, as Director Fick was recommending. So,
Let's refresh, please.
well,
Okay, I'll make a motion to revisit this in about 3 months, or whatever fits.
Why don't you give us a timeline, because that would be helpful for us, so if you want it back in March or April. Put that in there, that helps me.
March,
so the second meeting in March,
whatever,
Whichever.
that'd be 2 months, but
and a full board. Not that we can say with full board.
So if you want 3 full months, then it would be in April.
Okay, April then.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
General Manager Johnson, a roll call, please.
President Flowin,
Aye.
Vice President Doolittle.
Yes,
Director Fick.
Yes,
And Director Short.
Yes.
Okay.
Visit in April.
thank you.
Thanks for that extra little there. I need backup sometimes. At times. Okay, let's see, what are we up to here? We're up to B, notice of pre-approved rate and guaranteed deposit escalations and pre-approved capacity charge escalations, part A. Presented for information purposes only, which is good news. Director of Finance and Roman, please.
Thank you very much. Okay, so based on the last topic, this will change slightly. This was prepared as a notice of the course of rate changes that had been planned previously. However, it also relates to the guaranteed deposit, which that will change along with the rate structure, so no change there at this point. The meter exchange cost, however, that is in Article 13.21 of the rules and regulations, that is to be at cost. And so that cost estimate will increase to $407. The temporary service guarantee deposit, and this is really just for notice to the public. So these are things that are designed in the rules and regs to happen automatically. They have escalators, or they're tied to actual cost as they should be. So temporary service guarantee deposit, that's a deposit, again, that customers would receive back. This is a notice that the 1-inch refundable deposit would change to $1,764 for a temporary service. That's a construction meter, a large costly meter. And a 3-inch refundable deposit changes to $3,672. Again, that's a large meter, quite costly if they're damaged or lost or stolen. And the water capacity charges, water and wastewater capacity charges are also designated in the rules and regs to escalate based on the engineering cost index. And so those are increasing as well based on that index. And so on page 29 and page 30, I have a rate and fee schedule that details those new water and wastewater capacity charges, actually page 30, right at the end there. Will show that new wastewater capacity charge. There's on the wrong page here. I have it there. Okay. And let me see here. Just a second. And also, this is the first time that we've brought this rate and fee schedule, which I will revise to reflect staying at the current rate level. However, those other items will change as I've mentioned. This is the first time we've actually brought this rate and fee schedule in this format to the public. We've previously just depended on the rules and regulations, which there's an entire two articles dedicated to the rates and fees, but nothing that's really consolidated like this. And so we're at our legal counsel's suggestion, we're including this rate and fee schedule for the public's consumption for the first time. Really, there's not a lot to this other than providing notice to those items changing, and I'd be happy to take any questions about details on this topic.
Vice President Doolittle.
Thanks for this. I have a few questions, easy questions. So what does this name mean? I think I kind of know, but guarantee deposit, what's that? What is that phrase?
Oh, okay. Yeah, the guarantee deposit is what the customers pay when they establish service with us
Okay.
after they go through the credit check and identity verification
Okay.
process.
All right.
They're either determined to need to pay a deposit and keep that on hand on their account until they either go through 24 months in a good status or until they close their account and that's returned to them or applied to their account.
Okay, so does this occur around the will serve? When we tell someone building that we will serve them?
Well,
Does it occur around that time or?
it's separate, but we do tell them when we send out a new meter quote that they will also have to pay that guarantee deposit to establish an account.
So the will serve, that's a fee also? And,
Serve has a separate fee.
whoa, okay, well, seems like, so looking at this, I don't know, it's a little difficult when we say Article 14.19, Article 14.19.1. And I realize maybe it's because it's a legal document, but I've always thought that lawyers made things hard because they want to protect their jobs, How you doing, Jeff? Anyway, and that's why they use big words and stuff like that. And anyway, I would like to see that those would be hyperlinked to those articles or in some way to make it just a little bit easier as opposed to them going, where's Article 14.9 and stuff like that. If that's possible, I know that maintaining hyperlinks might be difficult, but I just want to discuss that. And, that's it. Just always trying to get it a little bit easier for people to read. Oh, and just this last one, this R&R in this column on page 29. I see that's resolutions and rules, regulations.
Rules and regulations.
Yeah, so let's look at delinquent account service charge, which is down in the miscellaneous charges boxes, the fourth one. So we say 10% on the balance but what does 14.8 mean? Is that
That's the rule that are in the rules and
again.
regulations.
All right,
Yeah.
okay, so,
It's so that anyone who reads this rate and fee schedule can then
know where it
easily
is.
cross-reference
Yeah.
with the rules and regulations that gives more detailed information.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad that this is available because, a lot of times it seems, that organizations, utilities, whatever, don't share this kind of information all in one place. That's great. Thank you.
Director Fick.
No question.
Okay, I have one more question. So private fire protection, what is that? Private fire
Oh.
protection?
There's separate meters that are specifically in place for fire. There's fire for fire sprinklers. I'm not really up to speed on what those requirements are, why some folks have to have those and others don't. But some, depending on the
It's the size of a building that has to have.
The size of the building?
To be able to put out fire.
Oh,
okay, there you go.
okay.
Yeah, so if they have to have a separate system, separate from their regular water meter. That's
From
what
just
that is.
depending upon the, what are this called, those yellow things called that we do?
Hydrants.
Hydrants. So this is in addition to, a hydrant, right? Is that what that means? Or,
This is inside their
It's
inside their
inside the
sprinklers.
facility.
right, but where's the water come? It's additional, they have to have a bigger meter and stuff and bigger pipe, this device size. What is this device size?
That's the meter size.
Okay, all right, okay. Yeah, okay.
Yes, they are.
Well, I'm gonna have to look into this a little bit more, but thank you.
Director Short. It seems pretty non-controversial. No questions from them.
So I heard different phases for this, or different phrases for this guaranteed deposit. That's not a fee.
Correct.
Correct. It is refundable
It is refundable.
when the person, when they're down and they pay their bills and.
Yes. It's either refunded to them in the form of a check or it's applied to their accounts.
Yeah.
Or if they pass the credit check, then they don't have to pay it at all.
Right, or they don't have to give the deposit at all.
I thought we would have done that first off.
We do. So when an account is established, they can choose to do the credit check. If they choose to do it and they pass, then they don't have to pay the guarantee deposit. If they choose to do it and they don't pass, then they have to pay the guarantee deposit. If they don't want to do it at all, they have to pay the guarantee deposit.
So some of this is new stuff. In other words, if somebody has a vacant piece of property, no water on it, they want water. That's development, and development pays its own way is our general philosophy or strategy on that.
Well, I make a motion that we accept the notice of pre-approved rate and guarantee deposit escalations and pre-approved capacity charge escalations, Part A, as presented by Director of Finance and Women.
Well, second.
This was for information.
Close.
Hold on.
Do a nice job there.
Okay.
Well, you're going so well.
I tried to, I saw that right as you said that.
I didn't want to interrupt.
Okay, anyway.
It sounded really good.
This one's the one we have to vote on.
Yeah.
Okay, item C. Meter connection fee methodology and fee changes, part B.
All right. Thank
What does that mean?
All right, well, so what we did was we originally, at the last meeting, when we deferred these items, we had the last topic and this topic combined into one, and it got a little complex, you know, with all of that going on. So we thought it'd be better to pull them apart, one as an informational item and the other as an action item. And so that's what we have here is the action item now, the meter connection fee methodology and changes to those fees. So this is just part B of the prior item. So we are today wanting to consider this new fee methodology and in an update to the fees. And making that change would require an update to the rules and regulations and a resolution to do so. So this, to start, something I didn't originally put in my report, but I added it. I didn't put it in my report last month, but I added it here just so that we recall that Proposition 26 requires that our fees be set at cost of service. So,
Could you put that in presentation mode, please?
oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. Oh. Cross-side. Why
You
is
can
it-
always use a little button down there. at the
Yeah, I
bottom.
think I'm gonna have to because
The bottom, all the way at the bottom. So, yeah,
This
right there. No, yeah, okay.
Oh, I went back.
Yeah, there you
go. All right, thank you. So Proposition 26 requires that fees be set at cost of service. Just as a reminder before we start this discussion. So what we have had in place for years and years is a fee structure for our meter connections or meter installations that was one flat fee, no matter per size of meter, okay? But no matter whether you were putting that meter on a paved street or on the long side or the short side of the street, meaning that if your meter is being placed or installed on the opposite side of the main line, that's long side, and that copper has to be run under the street. And so there's additional cost to that. So there's quite, when we do the analysis, there's quite a variance in potential costs depending on whether the street is paved and has to be cut and repaved. If there's a longer service line, which is that line that goes under the street to the main line, or if that meter is being placed on the short side of the street and a dirt road where there's no paving involved and less copper. So what we've done now is we've developed 4 scenarios that actually, if we look at page 37, in the resolution, Exhibit A, you can see that those fees are now split into, sorry, I don't have it up here for you. I apologize for that. I don't have it in my presentation here, but On page 37, you can see the four scenarios that now will exist depending on where that meter is installed, whether it's on the short side in an unpaved street or long side in a paved street. And there's quite a range of costs there. So this is actually going to more accurately capture the wide potential cost variances that we encounter in reality with our installations, and more appropriately follow Proposition 26. So this changes for a 1-inch meter for a non-tracked meter, meaning a tracked meter would be CMM where the infrastructure is already in place, where the service lines are already in place, or where a developer is putting in that service line. But a non-tracked meter, which is what we typically sell, would be changing from $2,002 to a range of $2,583 all the way up to $4,500, depending if they were on the long side of a paved street. And so that range just goes to show you that we were not really capturing as well as we should that cost and passing that along to the customer. Excuse me. Other size meters, so the larger meters, 3/4 inch meters, we generally don't sell. Larger meters, those are estimated or quoted individually based on those situations, but they're more rare. And so that will continue. So really what's changing here is the 1-inch non-tracked meter and the 1-inch tracked meter cost. And on page 36, I have the old article out of the rules and regs, and 37 is the way that the new article will read in the rules and regs. And so this really, we don't know exactly what the fiscal impact will be here, but we do know that we're going to become more accurate with passing along those costs as we should be compared to a single meter scenario. I think I've covered most of the material here. I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Vice President Doolittle,
Nothing from me, thanks.
Director Fick.
So it's roughly $1,200 between a short and a long in the dirt area, from what I can see. And the meter itself is roughly 2,000 still.
The paving, it's the labor, the, and the, if they have to bore, they try to bore under the road so that they don't have to cut the road and pave it. Okay, that's a good point because I did not mention this. So what will happen, this will not be a flat fee. This will actually be an estimate that we will reconcile and refund or bill the difference. Most likely we will be refunding. We've tried to set these fees, fee estimates so that we will be refunding to customers when we get the actual costs. And we expect that they'll come in lower than these fees. So yeah, worst case scenario most of the time, but we do have some unusual terrain in the district that sometimes could cause that cost to actually be a little bit higher than what we've quoted here. But we do expect this to be the majority of the time worst case scenario. So
well, this system that you're developing is much more fair as far to our district, and that's what we want. And it doesn't affect the general ratepayers. It affects probably 95% STR people right now, is my guess.
new customers
Well,
coming
that's-
in.
Any new developer.
Yeah. Okay, I'm happy.
Director Short.
No questions.
What I kind of noticed was, this is kind of like a theme I'm starting to see now. Where, for example, we have NBS under contract. That's an accounting, people that are listening, accounting, assisting kind of folks. They help us with our bookkeeping and.
Oh, Ide Bailey, that's Ide Bailey. NBS does the administration for CMM and the standby billing.
Standby.
Uh-huh.
Well, what I'm getting at is that we have an overall strategy to where we're trying to accurately define a cost
Yes.
so that we can fairly could recover that cost from whoever created it.
Right.
Kind of a thing. That's what my point was gonna be. And so this accomplishes that. And then I noticed with regard to, I'll jump ahead just slightly here, the discussion we're gonna have about using Paycom. I noticed that there's a lot of ways that staff, especially the field guys, could actually record when they punch in, when they punch out, when they start a project, when they complete a project, all these kinds of things. They can do that with their phone. And so what I'm seeing is that this is a kind of a theme that I'm seeing through the district to very accurately determine and fairly determine who should pay for what. And my compliments on that, the general manager and you folks. Because I think that's, because when one person, if we flat rate and we undercharge a person, the burden for the rest of the cost, as you said, falls on the district, but it specifically, it falls on the ratepayers that funds the district.
Correct.
So this is all good stuff, I think. Do we have any Citizens Advisory Council Chair, David Carrillo, have any comment on this?
Yeah, as a ratepayer's point of view, if they've already started on something like last year and they're not done yet with it, would they be charged as of now forward, or is it like retroactive to the stuff they're still working on?
This would be effective, as of February 1st, and anything that we've quoted up to this is a 30-day expiration, so they would still receive the old rates, or the old fees until that 30-day expiration on their new meter quote expired.
Is there any other public comment? Is there a motion from the board to approve the district's new meter connection fee methodology, fees and corresponding update to rules and regulations contained in resolution 25-1071 Exhibit A? Please. Motion.
I'll second.
Much.
Mhm.
General Manager Johnson, a roll call, please.
President Flowin,
Aye.
Vice President Doolittle,
Aye.
Director Fick,
Aye.
Director Short.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion carried. Item D, replacement of current. I need kind of get into that one a little bit. I'll actually read the correct, the official one here if I can find it. Fixed it and it didn't need fixing. Item D, replacement payroll processing service provider Paycom, which could also read. Sorry about the delay. Replacement of current payroll processing services provider with Paycom. That's my own addition to it. Is that Director of Finance, Ann Roman?
It is. Thank you again. All right, I promise this is my last item. Okay, so you've heard, I'm sure, some of the heartburn that we've had over the payroll processors that we have used in the last few years. The district has faced ongoing challenges trying to find a payroll provider who can meet our needs. We've had some serious tax filing inaccuracies that we've dealt with, poor customer service. We've evaluated over the last 3 years about 12 options and had extensive meetings and demos with Paycom in particular recently. And they have emerged as the only provider within our budget. We could look at much, much more expensive providers, but within the reasonable budget that meets our complex requirements. So staff is seeking board approval to proceed with executing a Paycom contract under a competitive procurement exemption. And we'll get into that a little bit later. So we have been searching, we've looked at so many different providers. This particular provider has a fully integrated platform that simplifies operations between HR, recruiting and onboarding, timekeeping and payroll. And also that mobile app that President Flown was speaking about. And they are capable of handling our complex requirements such as the FLSA regular rate of pay calculation, which is required by law. Surprisingly, most of the providers don't seem to be able to do that, even though it's required by law. And participation in both security and CalPERS. So just to back up a little bit, in 2022, the district transitioned away from the outdated and retiring Paychex preview platform. So the platform was actually being phased out. And so we had to make a change. And that's when things started to go downhill for us, unfortunately. We had at that time reviewed about 6 different alternatives. And we went with Paylocity, who turned out to have quite a few issues with the tax filings. And subsequently, we decided to return to Paychex, which we hoped that their newer platform would be better able to suit our needs. However, again, experiencing tax filing issues, which are serious issues. And, they've extended for a year or more before we've been able to get them resolved because of the customer service challenges. So having looked at so many providers, we looked at the district's bidding policy, and after consulting with legal counsel, we felt that we could cite a competitive procurement procedure exemption under section 3.3E of the bidding policy, which states after a solicitation of a number of sources, competition is determined inadequate. And since we were unable to find other vendors that would be able to meet those needs, we felt this would apply. However, for the contract award, we are bringing the decision to the board in the interest of full transparency and requesting that the board authorize the general manager to enter into a contract with Paycom. The financial aspect of this, the proposal that's included does look a little bit higher than what we will actually be paying, because that anticipates that we will be fully staffed at this point with the current staffing. This is well within our current annual budget allocation. We have a budget of $15,600 for Paychex currently, and this will actually come in around, I think it was around, let's see if I have it, 13,000, something like that. So we're well under that budget. This does come with an implementation cost, and that initial one-time cost has been negotiated down from $5,400 to $1,590. So about 71% decrease in that initial cost. And we have the budget available for this. We also have the funding available in another GL account within the finance department that we can transfer to cover the initial cost. So no amendment to the budget is required here. We're just requesting that the board authorize the general manager to execute the contract with Paycom. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Vice President Doolittle.
Well, I certainly believe you when you say you've done, your due diligence in finding this, and I do remember hearing about the issues with the other ones. And I'm inclined to say yes to this. I did have a question on page 46, the product selection. So I assume we're just going to have a narrow amount of these different products, or are these all going to be available?
We're going to have the ones that are in gray. You can't really
Oh, yeah, I can tell. Yeah, those that are
Yeah,
gray.
the ones that are gray.
Oh, okay. So like we won't have Cobra administration at the bottom.
Correct.
Our benefits administration, because we have that in some other stuff. So we're not gonna have geofence. Okay. Well, I was thinking geofence would be great so that we
Start,
we'd
yeah,
know if somebody was, gambling in a casino or something like that.
yeah, so we,
But we would have it set up if they're enter that spot, they're automatically clocked out. So.
these are à la carte, we can add them
Oh,
on
I thought-
if we need
Yeah,
to.
okay.
And some of these, like the geofencing really relates to punching. time
Yeah,
clock
I know.
punching, which is something that we're not necessarily using at the moment, but
Yeah.
certainly we have options.
Well, it would just be great if it were tied to SCADA and then they wouldn't have to necessarily keep up with where they are as punching in
Yeah.
for a project, but that it would do it for them. But that's all I was thinking. really.
Sounds pricey.
Yeah. That's all for me. Thank you.
Director Fick? Well, it sounds like you've done a lot of work on this one. I don't know too much about the paycheck industry situation. Is this a national organization and do they,
Paycom?
Yeah.
They are, yes. They're based out of Oklahoma. And that was one of so we did run this contract through Jeff.
Okay.
We vetted with Jeff, but we're not thrilled that, we still are subject to the Oklahoma laws, but we are, we're able to work with that if we have to. So it's not perfect, but it is, again, one of it's really the only option we have that can handle our needs. So
did they have an agent come here?
no, we've had all our meetings on Zoom.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
okay.
But they have done their work, those poor
Yes.
people.
They have.
To the ringer, making sure they can do every single thing that we need them to do within the system. And I know I could speak for Ann and Autumn on this. We've been through several conversions since I've been here and we never want to do it again. So we're hopeful this will be the final stop for many years to come.
Yes.
Director Short.
Yeah, I think it's a good call, especially with the tax filing issues. I think the last thing we need is the IRS around here, so. What's the estimated implementation time?
Oh, that's a good question. So yeah, we're hoping to be live by April 1st. That's becoming a little bit ambitious, but we're still hopeful that we can do that.
Sounds quick.
But we're also, we are not going to rush it. So if we cannot get a good implementation by April 1st, then we'll go for July 1st. So.
Okay. That's all.
So you'll see your pay stubs from Paycom instead of Paychex.
Are they cordial with each other or are they really cutthroat?
That's a good question. There's a number of providers out there in the space. There's probably 10 popular ones. We vetted them all. They all have quirks and they're not perfect. I want to assume that they probably hop employees from one provider to another when they're, looking for a new job. But we've had a lot of the same complaints that we've had with current provider from other folks too. So are they cordial? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Citizens Advisory Chair Dave Correa, do you have any comment on that?
Question, do they do other water districts?
Yeah, they actually do have another public agency. We asked that question, which is really important because public agency payroll is so much different than private, a lot to do with the CalPERS calculations. And they were able to look at the other one and verify to us that they were able to do what's called a Social Security offset calculation. And because the other agency is doing it, then we're confident that they can. What's interesting is that Paychex has a lot of other public agencies and a lot of them don't do the offset, what we've learned. So we really value and try to do our work right, even when it's harder, more complicated. So, we think they'll be able to do it.
I like that you investigate everything really well. And confident.
Yeah, we hope so. We don't want to do it again. It's a ton of work on the admin side and finance side to get this going. So And then you have to deploy it to staff and you have to train staff. So it's a lot of effort and we're ready for this to be a good one.
Any other public comment from TV land?
I'll make a motion that we that we approve this contract signing
Paycom,
or Paycom.
I'll second.
Sorry, I'm scared.
I have irrigated snow, so.
Oh, okay.
General Manager Johnson, roll call, please.
President Blumen.
Aye.
Vice President Doolittle.
Yes.
Director Fick.
Yes.
Director Short.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion carried.
Thank you.
All right, we'll run out. Start the implementation.
Comments for information purposes only on subjects not covered by the agenda. Opinions of individual directors are not necessarily the opinions of the board or the staff. No action will be taken. The board may provide staff with requests for future agenda items. Vice President Doolittle.
Okay, yeah, so the only thing I have in my report is some amendments and questions related to page 5, where the 2024 director requests. So on 2/21/24, that date, that request date, where I was requesting a policy on watching meeting recordings and reporting on them. I want that to say as if directors attended the meeting. It wasn't just for me. So it looks a little bit like that's just for me. Okay, and then I did request something related to the CIP plan review and the strategic plan review. And then I've also requested, and as I mentioned, also Director Jarlsberg did fleet report, fleet listing. We wanted that. And then line 6/12/24, that date, package system. Doolittle requested getting a sewage treatment package system for downtown. I just want, but that, I'd like for that to be clearer. And then there's some requests on here for me that I will follow up on. And and then I had the only thing I had was there was something related to requested rating or the urgency of items in the strategic plans, like, you know, what's we didn't really do that, like what was most important. And so I think we need to do that, because I remember Director Short on our last meeting said something regarding the strategic plan, and he was you know, wanting to focus on the climate change. And so that's an example of, you know, what are we focusing on? What's the, we don't have to use a rating, but just like, what is the board's
Priority.
priority? That's it. I couldn't think of the word. Thank you. I learned that when you can't think of a word, you say, how do you say in English? What's the word in English? Yeah. All right. That's all for me. Thank you.
For sure. So I'm sorry, I skipped one.
Yeah.
David?
Okay, yeah, the rest of us directors are lagging. VP Doolittle has 2 pages. Of
I know. I
requests.
laughed when I saw that. Believe me.
I'm impressed by keeping track of it between general managers. Who compiled this? Is it the general manager or Lisa?
Lisa and I together, it took, Lisa went back and we decided not to go previous years just because this took a lot of time. And we've kept track of it as we've gone along, but we decided to get more comprehensive, and I asked Lisa to review all the different minutes. I keep notes as we go every meeting, so she went through those, and then also through Zoom meetings and minutes. And I know that there might be 1 or 2 that aren't here, but we did our very best to compile it.
It's a noble effort. I was impressed with it.
It's quite an effort.
Yeah.
There's yeah, well, go ahead.
So, yeah. I don't have the notations that VP Doolittle had towards this. So I don't have too many on that. As far as more director comments, not to be mean to our staff, but the board also has to represent the ratepayers. That's why we're doing what we did. And we want to have a little more consideration. And we don't know what's going to happen in the next 4 months or so, 3 or 4 months. And we want to get a gauge on that. So that's what I'm doing.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now. Director Shaw.
Okay. Yeah, I want to comment on the director request as well. So in the status or date completed, does that mean On mine on the 090424 cybersecurity grant, there's an update or a status complete on that since the last board meeting. Will that be addressed in the?
Right now,
Okay.
when I have my turn.
Okay,
Yes.
that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
I have an understanding with the general manager. I request lots of things or ask questions more specifically about lots of things, but at the end, I always tell her, feel free to ignore me if you want to. Which
Well, it
is,
looks like that's happened.
yes, that's why there's an arrow there. Well, it would be.
A majority of these were pulled from board meetings. A lot of the things that we have off, if you've stopped by and you said, can we go to Christian Camargo's farm? We've done, and I didn't include those in here. These are mostly, not all, but I'd say 99% from board meetings or committee meetings.
I'll enumerate them informally if anybody really cares. Regarding activities at the farmers market last week, uniquely and somewhat unusually, we had a visit from a member of the U.S. Geological Survey. And we had, I think Kathleen, you were slightly distracted with somebody else at that time.
And you took that in our encounter.
But that was fun. It was just a chat. No great issues were discussed or anything, but it was just a face-to-face chat with somebody from an organization that we have a relationship with, and it was good.
And NBS.
And then shortly thereafter, I made a note, but I wouldn't forget. Two things, I have to make a list. NBS was there also, and I talked to that guy for 10 or 15 minutes. It was Jeremy, I'm pretty sure who it was. Jeremy Tamargo, I think was his name. He was going to email me, so I had his specific horsepower, but I'm pretty sure that's who it was. But I talked to him for 10 or 15 minutes before I asked him, well, what do you do? And he said she worked for somebody called NBS. So that's when I yelled for Kathleen. I don't know if he was talking to you or not, Dave. But similarly, had an excellent conversation with him. And again, it was one of those things where a face from the district had a face-to-face discussion with somebody that's very important to the organization. So I was very pleased with that. I also went to the what do you call that thing? The Landers Homestead Valley Association. This was on a couple of days ago, on the 13th. I went to that, and then you get reports from sheriff and fire. There were no fire people there for, I think, obvious reasons, but it well attended. There were 20 or 25 people there, and this was one of the people that presents is Marina West, who is the general manager at Bighorn Desert View, and she's also our representative with the Mojave Water Agency. And the thing that she mentioned in the short time that she was allowed was this part about how Mojave Water Agency has actually purchased property in Landers, and they're going to do some recharge there, which I thought was an interesting thing. That's all from me. General Manager's report, please.
Okay, I've got a few things here. Let's see. We, as you know, had a lot of power outages last week due to the fires, and I know there's a lot of devastation to those fires, so our inconvenience of power outages is very small in comparison for sure. But that's still a concern for us when we have power outages, because we do pump at certain times of the day, and when you don't have power, you can't pump. So we quickly put a strategy together to make sure that we were pumping every time we had power, and we made sure that we were at full capacity so that if we were in the event of having longer duration without power, that we would be okay for several days. So we did the calculations of demand, the calculations of how what our storage was, and making sure that we strategically put the generators that we have in places so that we can power up our booster stations. Well, lessons learned through that process as well. But I think we did a really good job to make sure that we had, full capacity especially during that day. So if there was fire or any issue up here, that we could be well prepared to take care of it. One of the issues that we learned about was our transfer switch here at the office is not working. So we have to manually turn on our generator right now, which is a minor issue, but we're gonna put that in the queue to get repaired. Our SCADA computer, because of the surges, ended up zapping and burning out. And we have all sorts of protections on it with the surge protectors and whatnot, but it still got to it. So that's been rebuilt. But those are some of the issues that, that we encountered during that time. Next, on 12/26/24, we received an email and we were not selected for the cybersecurity grant. So that is a bummer, but it's has to do with the fact that we have really good cybersecurity in place and they're really looking for candidates that had issues, and we're in a good spot. So there, pros and the cons there. We talked about the Joshua trees already. Yesterday, we had our Jacobs kickoff meeting for our Chromium 6 analysis, and we expect this phase to last 6 months. They were here on site. We gave them tours of our facilities, and we'll bring the final analysis to the board for consideration once we get there, probably midsummer. Last night, CAC was canceled due to lack of quorum. Hopefully that will change. We have a couple of applicants that we'll be bringing to you in February. And then finally, the list that you see in your packet, we're going to tidy this up and you'll see the list in the future, but we're going to drop off everything that was done. I just wanted you to see what was done last year so that I know there was some concern that there were requests out there that weren't being handled, but of these requests, we completed a majority of them, and then there's a few in queue and a few that still need to be addressed. The role of the board document that was adopted in 2014 talks about this. And I thought it was really good. And I think it was Vice President Doolittle that asked that to be sent out to everybody. So we did do that. And the excerpt at the top of the director request comes right from that document. And anything requiring more than 2 hours of staff time and requires different information to be pulled together is supposed to come to the board for approval before it gets done. And we haven't been practicing that. We've just been doing the work as we've been getting requested. So we're going to work on a different strategy, because while this is good, and I know the intents behind all the requests are good, it's a lot to manage in addition to regular work and then the strategic plan. So we really need to come together and figure out a strategy so that we're not dropping what we need to be doing on a regular basis to handle a different request that is going to take a little bit more time. So that way the full board understands the repercussions of putting the request through and then what we need to maybe put on the back burner so that we're all on the same page, really. But that's, other than that, I think that's the end of my report. Anything that you know, Ann or David? No? Okay. So thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Vice President.
I'm a little concerned about taking off the projects right away. And there were a couple of other comments that I had regarding this report, the director's request. And I'm going to have to go back and look at my notes to make sure that, maybe there was something I articulated that got missed, or, that's possible as well. And because then again, I didn't go over all of these. For example, there was one regarding having a civil engineer and you put a date by it, but I never knew that happened. You know what I mean? It looks like that was done regarding all this stormwater, and the grading plans.
Reported on that last year on that date that I put on here to the board when we brought forth the stormwater exhibit and the permeable asphalt. We did.
I remember the permeable asphalt.
We did contact an engineer in that process.
Okay, I don't recall that, so I'm going to have to take a look at that and see if that really, did that. I mean, so there's some other things on here. So I just want to, anyway, so, I just, before you take these off, don't take it off like the next time, if that's okay. If we could let it stay on for another 2 meetings or something before you remove it and give me some time to look this up. compare it to my notes.
I was just going to clean up the list so that anything that was undone was listed and anything that was done is then removed because it's already behind us. But if you'd like to see it in another meeting, we're happy to do that.
Right, yeah, because I might question whether or not it was really done or, that the request, that there was actually understanding on what the request was and consideration of, you might say, oh, that's done. And I would be like, well, that's not really what I meant, or, I have this feeling that it's still not done, so.
That's another reason that the full board will need to review some of the requests because I don't always have a full understanding of what it is. And you may not have a full understanding of what the undertaking is to actually bring it, to fruition.
Yeah,
Director Fick, anything?
on her report,
What?
on her report.
Oh, well, on Joshua Trees, our local district to our west, they kicked the can down for 30 years. I've been out there 40 years. I watched them kick the can, kick the can, kick the can. And they also did a lot of zoning that didn't figure for upgrade pumping. So they did a lot of things wrong. So, we're way ahead of them on that kind of stuff. Plus Joshua Trees, they have 3 to 4 times more Joshua Trees than we ever did.
It's true.
Because Joshua Trees like it at 3,000, we're at 2,700. So that's why our southwest corner has them.
A bunch more.
Yeah. And that section 3 has 12,667 of them. Or did before that little fire, so.
Going back. Director Short?
No questions.
Item 9, closed session, public employee performance evaluation. Authority for that is 54957. Title, General Manager. The use of a closed session for this subject matter is authorized by the aforementioned section. I'll place a copy of it on the podium there for review by those present. Upon completion of the closed session, the Board of Directors will reconvene here in the boardroom to report any reportable action taken by the board and continue the meeting with item 10, which is adjournment. Jeff, do you want to do it?
Yes, I certainly can.
Fire away.
Bring us back in session.
Okay, the board met in closed session as agendized and took no reportable action.
Thank you very much.
I make a motion that we conclude this meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Meeting is adjourned at 2100 hours, more or less.
So whose is this? This was somebody.
I thought it was yours. So it's-
I thought that was.
Have a good
his.
night.
I thought you.
Yeah.
Steph, bye-bye.
Thanks for your